This is Stephen Munatones, the CEO of KAATSU Global, and welcome again to our monthly webinars. This webinar will be conducted in three parts. And the first part, I'll introduce our guest. The second part is many of you submitted questions prior to this to today, and I have a list of those questions, and then we'll go through the answers. It will go rather long, so if some of you drop off or have to go, that's okay. Email us at info@kaatsu.com. So info at KAATSU, KAATSU.com. And then we will send you a copy of those question and answers. And then the third part of our webinar will be you can use the links below and just ask a question. So the first part will be with Tina Newman. Tina Newman is from Costa Mesa, California. This is Southern California. Tina, in her youth, was one of the fastest swimmers in the world. Her specialty was sprint freestyle and sprint butterfly. Incredibly, at the age of 14, she represented the United States in international competitions, and that was a lifetime ago. Currently, she has two wonderful children. And how many grandchildren now?
Three.
And Tina was and is really a customer of ours that is using KAATSU perfectly. And what I mean by perfectly is she has totally integrated KAATSU into her life in ways that actually we imagined and hoped, but actually Tina is truly embodying KAATSU. And we invited Tina to this webinar. So you can actually hear from her how initially she was a little bit hesitant to believe the claims that we made, but she actually accepted it. She bought a few units for herself and her son. And then she has really incorporated KAATSU in her life in many ways. She lives in a condominium where she has to walk up and down stairs. She's preparing her lunch, working with her clients. She's an aesthetician. And Tina, if someone told me you were 39, I'd believe them, but you're not. So just sort of tell us how you got into KAATSU, what you do, and take as much time as details, because I find it fascinating.
Thank you. And hi to everybody and welcome. And thank you for having me because I love talking about KAATSU. There's a few things I love talking about in life. Skin. I'm an esthetician for 40 years, 31 my own business. I love talking about my father and my husband who passed away and caused so much grief and encouraged to live forward. But Steve has a sister, and we were best friends when we were little girls. So Steve's family and his parents I'm extremely close to. Steve had introduced me to KAATSU, and I always kind of forget the year, but I'm going to guess that he kind of told me a little bit about it in 2016 or 17. No. Sorry, 2006 or 7. Would you have maybe planted a seed? And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then moving forward, as an esthetician, I'm loving my job. Repetitive movements brought me, even in those years, 2007 and 8 and 9, I went to 2 hand specialists in Newport Beach, very well known. Dr. Cook was one, Dr. Rose. I'd say my wrists and my hands are hurting so bad, and I'm so sad because I love what I do and I want to keep doing it. And the night I would throw my arm over to my husband and he would rub it deep and it would feel so good. So in 2015, my husband passed away. And even though I have two wonderful children, I wasn't a grandmother yet. I really wanted to work more and more and more. And I would say to myself, how am I going to do this? And Steve mentioned, I think you would want to just try KAATSU. And I'm like, how much is it again? Blah, blah, blah. Well, COVID hit. And I thought, and my son worked for Apple, and Tanner's 31 right now. But at that time during COVID, he was working for home, sitting a lot. And before that, he was standing a lot. So I would text Steve, oh, I think this would be a great product for my son. And I'm ready to buy one and share it. So whenever that was, I want to say 7 years ago.
Yeah, about.
I showed up at some hotel where Steve was with a gentleman who also knows so much about KAATSU with my son. We went over a few things, and like every mom, I told Tanner he can take it first. Well, as time was moving on and I got to use it sometimes, I kind of said to my son, I'm sorry, I don't want to share it with you. I want it all for myself. I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to feel relief. So I have a private business. So I must say to you, in the very beginning of COVID, I didn't work, but then my clients started coming to me. So back again, I felt when COVID hit, no clients, no husband, oh my gosh, flooded with anxiety again, because I had lost, connection. I love my work. I love it's so purposeful and I get so connected to people, mostly women. I couldn't go out to my gym. That's another place I love to be, a coffee shop with friends and talking. It was just, so what I found was KAATSU was starting to not only, I wasn't experiencing pain anymore. I started to love it in the evening, whether it was grabbing a hold of me tight and little kind of buzzing. I was saying to Steve, I feel like it's like a machine holding on to me. And I'm not sure if Steve remembers, but I compared it to Temple Grandin. She's very famous, a woman, and she created and made this box for herself that took her anxiety way down, almost like a weighted blanket. So I think, just like a lot of people, I read questions that come in constantly, even though I'm not the one answering them. I'm lucky enough to be on the email threads. And I think I used to be like a lot of you. I used to make KAATSU kind of complicated. Like, do I need to use it and lift weights with it? Do I need to be doing something? So a few years I would do lunges and do little baby weights. I honestly have to say, it's become the simplest thing for me. And I'm a little bit different than you all. I'm very attached to it. So whether I do put it on in the car because I know I'll be walking through the mall, Fashion Island, South Coast. And I maybe this is rude. I don't care that it makes a little buzzing noise. Not only do I not care, I love it when people are like, what are you wearing? Tell me about it. I'm like, oh my God, take a picture. It's amazing. So yes, I know we say don't wear KAATSU in the car, but I do. I wake up, I come down to the second floor of my loft, grab a cup of coffee, go back up to my bedroom, and it's the very first thing I do on my arms. That's how I get my day started. And I am convinced I just squeeze my hands. I'm on my computer, sipping my coffee, and it's a no-brainer. My pain, no matter if I'm waxing people nonstop before 4th of July, 4 days straight, Memorial weekend, Labor Day weekend, my pain has never returned. So is it a miracle? It's a miracle to me. It's a miracle, and it's upsetting to me that these two doctors a long time ago didn't know about something like this, and they still don't know about it, and they're not really willing to accept it. So sometimes I feel intimidated and know that I want the world to know. I have friends whose husbands or they get conditions, and I'm so excited to show it to them. And I'll reach out to Steve and he'll say, they have to ask their doctor first. And I'm like, no, no, I want them to be like me. So at 61 years old, Steve knows this, and I'm not embarrassed to tell you that if I'm 61 now, so 7 years ago, when I started using KAATSU the first year, all of a sudden I had my period again. And I wasn't bummed at all because I felt fantastic. Well, Steve, when I told him, he's like, yes, hormonally, if it helps you metabolically, if it speeds up circulation, your whole entire body, not only when I'm wearing KAATSU, but when I take KAATSU off, my metabolism is really kicked up. So energetically, I feel better. And when I say that I bring it to my gym, I want to make sure today was a great example. It would have been great to take photos. My gym is very tiny and it has all new machines. Well, I wanted to learn how to use the machines. So I hired a girl to teach me. And I specifically said, I want no weight. And she looked at me like, and I said, I'm going to wear my bands and I just want to learn the motions because at 61, I have to still do some bending for my muscles and my legs and my booty, which also reminds me that since I've been using KAATSU, I did have my knee ached. My left knee had surgery when I was 14. I have a big scar. That pain is completely gone. And all I could say is it because I've kept my circulation going at the speed of maybe somebody 40 or somebody 35?
Tina, can you just give us examples from morning to evening when you
Okay.
wake up and you go down to the second floor? When you put on your bands, then what do you do with the bands? I mean, are you
So if I put thank you, I'm sipping coffee, arms are done. I get my tights on. I get ready to either take clients or leave and go to coffee or walk. My leg bands go on, and that's why I wanted to say they're on in the car. I don't necessarily have the motor on my C4, but my legs are in place. And so if I'm leaving the house and I do go to the 12, that's the gym, I'll walk on the treadmill. It's very easy for me to walk in my bands. So when some people say they put their bands on in the questions and they're having trouble, I'm not quite sure. You can send that email to me and I'll answer for them. I'll FaceTime them. I'll go on a call because I use my leg bands on medium or high, and I only cycle. And on my arm bands, it's always medium. It's never high, never low. So when I leave the house, I've got my leg bands on, or when I'm in my wax room, getting up, getting down, I don't sit a lot in my job. So that's really good. So by 12:30 or 1 on the days that I work in my loft, my armbands are right here in this kitchen. I put them on either while I'm eating. I always put them on when I'm making eggs and spinach, but I don't as much anymore because I'm very worried about them breaking. I need a Bluetooth model because I have my old bands and they get caught on things, which is my bad, but my C4 works beautifully. So I'll put my bands back on while I'm eating. And my arm bands are a no-brainer for 2 to 3 times a day. My leg bands are the ones that I kind of slack and always do it once, but sometimes I don't put them back on. But recently I have ankle weights in my bedroom, and it's hot and it's summer. So I'll have shorts on, like long shorts, and I'll put the band over and I'll put an ankle weight on and I just lift. I'm in bed. I'm relaxed and I'm doing ankle raises, and I'm being methodical and moving slow. The one thing, the message I think that's best coming from me is I'm addicted to KAATSU literally and figuratively, and I feel it every day, and I don't like to miss a day. I take it on an airplane with me. I take it to see my grandchildren in Austin. It's such an easy way to incorporate exercise into my life. And I do look back on my body from when I started using KAATSU, and I do feel like I might weigh a little bit more. My arms are stronger than they were. My legs are stronger than they were.
Yeah, you definitely 100% have more definition.
I
100.
do. And I mean, you've known me for a long time, so definition isn't my goal. I'd love to be lanky and tall and like a ballerina, but I'm not. So I've really learned since working on mental health and physical health, you know, with a broken heart in grieving, and there were times where I couldn't get myself out of my house. KAATSU was a godsend, if you will. That's a weird way to put it, but I mean, Steve, you know, you didn't stop hearing from me those first years. We don't talk as much anymore, but I'm more than ever addicted to my KAATSU, and I want people to know that it really works, and you can start off gentle. And you know I wear my bands exactly like you talk about on the website, one finger in. So I wrap my bands the way you say, and I know that if somebody is not maybe in great physical health yet, that even when we don't wrap our arms or our leg bands as tight, it works. It's an amazing product, and I wish doctors were more accepting and open, inviting to learn about it, because I've been a part of KAATSU for a long time, and these stories of people healing, they are truly miraculous.
Yeah. And then, Tina, before we move on to part two, there are some moves that you do that are very unusual, but as from a swimmer's perspective, they totally make sense. Can you tell us what you do on a bench?
I can, and I have my bench still. I got a bench for my house, just a really cheap one during COVID. And I started realizing that, you know, from sitting, it's pressure for me. I didn't really have weights at that time, so I would take water bottles. But I think what Steve's referring to is the motion of swimming with KAATSU bands. So if you're laying on a bench, backstroking, it's opened up my spine from I lean over a lot with work, so it was opening me up and creating a type of tension as if I was in the water without being in the water. So whether I'm freestyling on a bench slowly, and I kind of am a little bit of a weirdo that I squeeze. So I squeeze. I like the whole and when I am laying in my bed, it's also about squeezing. So but I also don't squeeze and use my KAATSU bands without that. So there's times when I am very deliberate on a bench and I act as though I've got weights in my hands.
Yeah.
And it's an unbelievable workout, whether I'm benching and pushing and holding. So squeezing here, squeezing here, squeezing. Even right now, I don't have my KAATSU bands on. And to move slowly and methodically as we get older, I'm convinced KAATSU has built muscle. So other than on my bench, the doing kind of copying a swimming motion, sometimes I use it for my booty, and I'll just put one foot up on it and do like a reverse lunge, but I can do that with a chair. I like holding on with one hand because I realize I want to ergonomically, I want to do the exercise right so that I'm building muscle and not hurting myself. And constantly, I feel like with KAATSU, I'm constantly in a state of building and healing, if you will. And I don't know about other things that do that other than laying down and being in a PT's office where they have all the equipment. So it's little. and I can take it everywhere. And
I'm going to answer a question. And someone asked if give a brief explanation of KAATSU. And I want to make this segue because what you said for most people who are not KAATSU users doesn't make any sense. You were talking about squeezing and holding and other things. And actually, those kind of isometric exercises, so a push or a pull or a squeezing of the muscles, is actually the most effective use of KAATSU. And the reason why is, and I just put a KAATSU band on, and I don't know if you can see, I can see here, I have a KAATSU on one arm and I don't have the KAATSU on the other. And what is happening is the band is engineered so your arterial flow, so the blood from your chest out to your arms or legs, continues. But when the band is inflated, and this is what Tina refers to as the KAATSU cycle. So it inflates for 30 seconds and deflates for 5 seconds. Inflates and deflates, inflates and deflates. And every time it inflates incrementally more. So it's getting slightly tighter. That difference between one cycle and the next cycle is not enough for us to consciously understand there's a tightening. However, that incremental increase in pressure in the band actually has a profound change in your capillaries and veins in your arms or legs. And this is what the beauty of KAATSU is. The KAATSU, our patent on KAATSU, is actually not on muscle building. It's not on healing. It's actually the strengthening of your vascular tissue, so your arteries, capillaries, and veins. And so when Tina's explaining the reverse lunges or doing some unweighted bench press or the swimming motion, what she's actually doing when she has the bands on, either her arms or legs, is her arms are engorged in blood. And then you can see the difference in, this is my normal color, this is my KAATSU color. I have more blood in this arm. So when I squeeze it, internally, I'm actually exercising. I'm actually creating stress on the muscle. And stress in this case is a very good thing. It's not a mental stress. It's a pressure in the muscle as if you were doing exercise. But all I'm doing is I'm making a bicep curl. I'm trying to squeeze my hand. What happens is when the capillaries are engorged in blood, like they are now, compared to this arm where it's not engorged, there are more muscle fibers that are actually activated. So right now, if I did some bicep curls or some push-ups or something, I would actually be activating more muscles in this arm versus this arm. And that's why when Tina is actually explaining KAATSU in the course of her day, and she's squeezing or pushing or pulling or walking up and down her loft or working with her clients, she is getting not only the benefits of a regular movement, but also this enhanced activation of muscles in her movement. And therefore, her body composition is changing. And although she says she hasn't lost weight, she's actually become a healthier weight. And Tina, and because of all this, your excuse me, the muscles, when they have excuse me, stress on them, they send a signal to our brain, and then the brain releases hormones. So even though I have this band on, right now my brain is secreting hormones. And those hormones are allowing Tina's body, your body, my body to actually change. So whether she's eating, working on a client, whether I'm on a phone or typing email, and I have the bands on, this simple engorgement of blood in the limbs leads to a hormonal response that then leads to a body composition change. So that's sort of the overview of a scientific explanation of what these bands are are doing and what the changes that are caused in the body. Tina, there was a few things I remember as you were learning KAATSU. One time, I remember you came over and we were discussing how to properly put the bands on your legs. Do you recall that conversation?
Absolutely. Making sure we were sitting at the edge of the chair, not flexed, putting them on at an angle. We made a little video. We're talking about leg bands
Yeah.
and and making sure we don't like sit hard on the blunt because what
The
do you
bladder,
call it?
the air bladder.
The air bladder inside the leg. So we want to be more at the edge of the seat, which I have to do a lot if I am wearing them and I am in my wax room downstairs seated. Yeah. I mean, it's after 7 years, it's just gotten, you just do it. I can understand it taking a while. Can I talk about when you first also had me and I was like convinced how could this ever help my carpal tunnel and the pain?
Yes.
The tiny movements you had me do, when you would leave my house, I'd be like, he's crazy. I'm not going to use chopsticks and move a rice grain or a macaroni and rub a ball in. Well, over time, I don't know if it was that. I don't know if it's my pressure, but I really took heed. I really wanted to feel better. And I can't drive home the point enough that just those tiny motions help me either get strength back in. These doctors told me I had arthritis and its only way to end it is to stop being an esthetician, which broke my heart. And here I am years later doing it just as much as ever with no pain. So when we do with KAATSU instruct people just to start off with little movements, it really paid off.
Yeah. We call those micro movements.
Okay.
And remember, when Dr. Sato, who is a Japanese doctor who invented KAATSU, his goal was always to help older Japanese. And the Japanese population has so many older people. It's actually, I think it's already occurred or will soon occur within the next few years. There are as many people in Japan over the age of 65 or 55 than there are under the age of 55. So it's the history's oldest population. And Dr. Sato knew as people got older, they had the aches and pains of life. Their ability to lift things or pull things or move their arm in any way would get more and more difficult. So he developed over the years different micro movements. And Tina, your carpal tunnel syndrome, your tendinitis, that's why we ask you to take a golf ball or a tennis ball and simply move it on your countertop, your kitchen countertop. It sounds so easy. It doesn't sound intuitive, like, oh, that's going to help. But in fact, these little micro movements do help. That's why typing on a computer, texting, handwriting a letter, turning the pages of a book just sound like that's not physical therapy. But in fact, it is a way to elicit a bunch of healing hormones that go through your body. And that's what you benefit from. Just these little movements. You didn't need to, do some heavy wrist curls or bicep curls. It was these things that you do in your office, in your kitchen, up in your bedroom, etc. Yeah. So, well, thank you very much.
Back to the leg bands. Was there a point you wanted to make about the leg bands and putting them on? Had somebody asked a question?
No, that was one of the things. And
okay.
What it is it took me 13 years to understand what Dr. Sato was doing. He took me under his wing, and we were in hospitals. We were in the ICU, the CCU, critical care unit. We were all over the place. He took me to dojos where sumo wrestlers were. We saw Olympic volleyball players, as well as people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and up to 104. Comatose people with amputees. And each time he would show me how KAATSU is used. And he needed to show me the whole spectrum of humanity using KAATSU in order to help any future question. And so, Tina, when I was helping you on your KAATSU journey, it did take time for you to understand all the little things like micro movements and how to put on the bands properly, how to look for your capillary refill time, etc. So everybody else out there who has questions about KAATSU, it's normal and it's okay. Continue to fire away questions, and sometimes you'll hear a question stated in a different form, and we'll answer it as best we can. But if you ever have any questions, you can send the questions to info@kaatsu.com. If it's a specific question to Tina, we'll shoot it over to Tina, and Tina, you could take it away. You're a great teacher of KAATSU now. And then, so have the questions. You could go to our website. We have all these webinars recorded and posted. And so, with that, I'll move to part 2 of our webinar, and that's with all the pre-submitted questions. And what I did was I put it on a sheet of paper with the questions, and then the answers followed in red. Now, if you have to leave, or you forgot something, or you didn't remember something, email us and we'll send you those list of questions and answers. They're rather long. I think it's 11 or 12 pages, but Tina and I will go through these questions right now, and hopefully you're out there and your questions will be discussed. And let me pull it up now. Oops. Sorry. I had it with me. I had it. Where did it go? Here it is. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and then you'll see the questions, and then we'll discuss the answers. Okay, and hopefully you can see the questions here. And some of the questions are lengthy, but we'll break it up. And the first question was, I purchased the KAATSU C4 system earlier this year for an important part of my recovery from brain surgery. And I'm so glad that I did. I had a session with one of your consultants to prepare for that, but now I'm trying to incorporate it as part of my regular workouts. I am a 66-year-old female who, prior to surgery, was in good shape, but now I want to optimize my fitness by using KAATSU in all the different ways that I can. After reading through your manuals, which is a little challenging because they are outdated with the newer equipment, and watching some of your videos, I'm still left with some questions. So the first comment is, although we have different products out there, there are some people actually, incredibly, who are still using our KAATSU Nano that we made in 2014. So almost 12 years ago. People are still using the KAATSU Nano. It's a bigger device. We had all kinds of iterations since then. But the pressures, the protocols, the applications are all the same. So whether you have a KAATSU B2 or a Cycle C4 or C3 or 2, they're all the same. So don't worry about the different model name changes. We're teaching the exact same thing. So her first question is, regarding the topic of doing arms before legs, I am assuming that only pertains when you're doing an arm and leg workout in the same session. I usually do arms and core and then legs and core on different days. So this isn't clear. So the answer here is the reason why we recommend everybody do their arms and then their legs when they're doing a double workout, so arms and then followed by legs, is because prior to establishing KAATSU Global as a corporation, we did a 10-year study with a team of cardiologists at the University of Tokyo Hospital. And here we found if people did the KAATSU on their legs before they did the KAATSU cycle, and they were doing something vigorous, then some people, a very small percentage, but some people would get lightheaded. And it makes physiological sense. What happens in the arms is when you first do the arms, which are a smaller, shorter limb than your legs, it literally prepares your entire cardiovascular system for KAATSU. Now, if you do your legs first and you have the constant mode and you do vigorous, let's say, burpees, squats, you're on a treadmill, etc., the problem doesn't come when you're doing KAATSU. The problem comes when you take off the leg bands after doing the constant mode and vigorous exercise. What happens is you get this rush of blood into your thoracic cavity, your chest. That can cause some lightheadedness. And that is what we found at the University of Tokyo Hospital with cardiologists. And obviously, we made sure that if you're going to do legs only, we absolutely want you to be well hydrated. We absolutely want you to start in the KAATSU cycle, not constant mode. We absolutely want you to start on the low pressure. And there are many people who say, Steve, I'm very fit. I can handle high pressure. I don't want to waste time in low because I don't feel anything. Absolutely true. But you're not wasting time because at low pressure, you may not consciously feel anything, but your capillaries and veins do. Absolutely, they do. So we want your capillaries and veins to gradually get engorged in blood, and then they gradually get more elastic. This is very, very important. And if you do that, do the constant mode, you're well hydrated, you start in low, and you can proceed up to medium and high pressure later, there's no problem with a fear of being lightheaded. But there are some people, and again, remember, we were testing people with cardiac issues. So people who had had heart attack, who had had a stroke, who had a stent implanted, heart surgery, etc. So we were working with the most vulnerable. And over 10 years and over 12,000 patients, we found these conclusions. And this is where I was learning KAATSU. So this is why we always want you to do arms before legs. Now, in this case, when you're only doing the legs and core, make sure that you do those three things. Well hydrated, KAATSU cycle first, and then KAATSU cycle low. And ideally, you're doing the KAATSU cycle on your legs low while you're sitting down and just allowing the blood to be gradually and gently engorged in your limbs. So that's why we recommend arms before legs. But if you're only going to do legs, then there are certain protocols we want you to follow. Her second question is always doing warm up and cool down cycles. First, some places, I think we're talking about the manual, say 1 to 2 cycles, and others say do 3 to 4 cycles. What is the purpose of the warm up and cool down? Are they very important and should be skipped? I'm used to doing a warm up to a workout, but I usually don't do a cool down. Both are important. Tina was a world-class athlete in her youth. And when she was a world-class athlete, she prepared and worked out very specifically because she was competing against the world's best swimmers years ago. There was a very, very specific things that she warmed up. She did various training. She, used hand paddles. She used a kickboard. Her technique was flawless. And after a race, she would cool down. This is what top level athletes do. It doesn't matter if it's track and field or what have you, rowing, swimming, cycling. What we teach are the optimal ways to use KAATSU. So We don't teach, and this is what Dr. Sato, the KAATSU inventor, instilled upon me, is never compromise on what we explain KAATSU is or how you should use it. Just because you don't have time, we should not say skip the warm down or skip the warm up. What we teach is the way to optimally use KAATSU. And so what we optimally use KAATSU is always warm up or start KAATSU in the KAATSU cycle mode with low pressure. After you've gone through your exercises, if you are doing something vigorous or intense, we want you to cool down, or in other words, remove the lactate from your muscles. Now, if you use KAATSU like Tina and I do occasionally, well, maybe reading or maybe relaxing in bed or maybe in front of our laptop, here we're not pushing ourselves intensely or vigorously. So there is no need to do a warm down. It's very similar to if I went to go walk my dog. My dog is very small. He walks slowly. I'm not doing anything intensely or vigorously. So in this case, I don't need a warm down. However, if I went out for a jog, and whether it's moderate or intense, there I would need a cool down. So we recommend a warm up and a cool down in the cases where you're doing something vigorous or intense. The difference between 1 or 2 cycles and 3 or 4 cycles is actually their duration. So we have many users who are competitive cyclists, many track and field athletes, and many athletes who run a 10K or a half marathon or marathon. So the longer your sustained activity is, the longer your cool down or warm down should be. So again, our recommendations are varied because we have various applications of KAATSU. But again, start and end anything with the KAATSU cycle and you'll be good to go. This is actually a good one for Tina and me to answer. And number 3, what is the benefit of using KAATSU on days when you're mostly sedentary? It is absolutely, it's even more important to use KAATSU on the days when you're sedentary than on days where you're active. The days that you're active, you can skip a KAATSU day. It's the days when you're sedentary. Tina, I know you enjoy watching the Sunday news programs, and there you're using KAATSU, and this is ideal because on Sunday morning you wake up at a leisurely hour, you turn on the TV, and then what do?
I grab my coffee and put my KAATSU on, and Sunday is my day, just traditionally, to take it really easy. And oh my gosh, how wonderful to take it easy, but still optimize my circulation and metabolism. And real quick, Steve, that last question, I want to say something about me.
Yep.
Is I went to Pilates yesterday, and I did 3 cycles on my arms before. And then when I left Pilates, I put them back on and did 3 cycles. It's such a beautiful feeling. So what I want people to know is I mostly don't wear KAATSU if I'm going to push myself. Yes, I attempted to do Pilates with KAATSU once, and it was so hard and not necessary for my body.
Yeah.
So KAATSU is my favorite thing before and after or walking. So back to the sedentary. Oh my gosh, you feel like you didn't skip a workout day when you're using KAATSU on a relaxing day.
Yeah. And that's especially true. We had, Tina, Chris Morgan, our chief performance officer. He was just actually at the Boston Celtics teaching, and obviously the NBA season is over. So Chris was teaching the NBA players how to use KAATSU in the off season when they're typically not training. And a light went on. And go, oh wow, this is like training without training. Absolutely. In KAATSU, on days where you're sedentary, it's like you're exercising without exercising.
And I can't tell you enough, when I was in deep grief and not wanting to leave the house, not only for my mental state, for my physical state, that's when I really fell in love with KAATSU. So
Yeah. And next question is, when and how is it appropriate to use the medium and high cycles? I strictly been using low, and that's good. Quite often we assume that low is the least amount of benefit, medium is a little more, and high is best. That could not be further from the truth for everybody. For some people, low is the um, best pressure, and some people medium is best, and some people high is best. For some people, using low is good most of the time, and using a higher medium is good for maybe a specific physical therapy move, or maybe you're practicing a golf swing or something very specific. So we have these low, medium, and high ranges because, in fact, when Dr. Sato looked back on all the different pressures that he had used on people between 1973 and 2003, so 30 years of data, he looked back, he found that and I actually have the original little pressure monitor that we used. This is, or Dr. Sato used, from 1973 to 83 to 93 to 2003. And he kept track of all those pressures. And he found, when he plotted those on a graph, that he found that there was a low, there's a group of people who were low, a group of people who were medium, and a group of people who were high on this graph. And because he knew the benefit of going pressure on, pressure off, we took those when we were making a machine to replicate what he was doing. Again, up until the year 2000, it was Dr. Sato out there doing KAATSU with a handful of other academic researchers and doctors in Tokyo. But what we wanted to do was create a machine like the KAATSU machines that we now know. We wanted to create machines so it wouldn't have to be only Dr. Sato and a handful of other people doing a KAATSU. And so we looked at the data and we thought, wow, this low section, we can do 8 cycles there. This medium section, we can do 8 cycles there. And this high section, we could do 8 cycles there. And so therefore, we came up with low, medium, and high. But there were always exceptions to that. There were people with severe cerebral palsy. There were people with Raynaud's disease. There were people with multiple sclerosis. There were people with very high body mass indexes, like sumo wrestlers. There were also people with very low body fat percentages, like marathon runners. The marathon runners, as you can imagine, I could put, even though they're extremely fit, they don't have much body fat. And so when you put on the bands on low, for them, the effective pressure was quite high. And then we take a 300, 400, 500, 600 pound sumo wrestler, and we put the band on and squeeze as we might, they got a lot of body fat to get through it. It actually, as a shock absorber, a marshmallow, a pillow, if you will. And so we had to put a high pressure to effectively get a medium pressure. And so we had all these various body types. And so we created not only a low, medium, and high pressure, but also a custom pressure. That custom for being lower than low and higher than high. So we did that custom very, very low pressure for people with cerebral palsy or multiple sclerosis, etc. And then we had a very high pressure, higher than high, for people that were overweight or were athletes who were just big people, like a shot putter, like a a heavyweight boxer or wrestler or sumo wrestler. And so therefore we had low, medium, and high, and then custom size. That doesn't mean that low is less than medium is less than high. It just means that what is appropriate for you. And what is appropriate for you is measured. And we had to think about this a lot. How do we know what's good for everybody? Well, when we were in the laboratory at the University of Tokyo Hospital, we could put a patient in an MRI machine and then actually look at what their body was doing at certain pressures. But that on a practical basis was impractical and way too expensive. So we came up with the capillary refill time. And that is when you push your forefinger or your thumb into the base of your palm or right above your knee or your calf, and you press firmly and then release. So you press firmly and release. And when you press, the capillaries under your finger, the blood is evacuated and it becomes blanched, but then it quickly fills in with blood. That is your capillary refill time. We want this capillary refill time to be quick, as in 1 second, maybe 2 seconds at most. And how do we count the 1 or 2 seconds? 1001, 1002, 1003. If I press my finger into my hand and I released, and this area would remain white for 1001, 1002, 1003, this band is effectively functioning as a tourniquet. And we don't want that. What we want is this band to be effectively engorging my limb in blood. And therefore, when I press my finger and release, the blood is coming back very quickly. So to answer, that's a long way to answer this question, that is it appropriate to do medium and high? And if you're using low and your bands are inflated, you can check your capillary refill time. And let's say I'm on low traditionally, and today I'm going to try medium. Today, as my bands are inflated, press your finger into the palm of your hand and release. And if that blood comes back quickly, that's your body's way to tell you you have permission to go up to medium. And then let's say I'm in medium and I want to try high. Do the same thing. Push your finger into the palm of your hand, release. If it comes back quickly, that's your body saying you can do high. So that's a very simple, very effective way that your body can tell you when to go from low to medium to high. And I want to say one thing. Some people, if they're right-handed or left-handed, whatever how, usually the hand that you're dominant on, so I'm a right-hander. My right hand, my vascular system in my right hand is more well-developed than my left hand. I write with this, I brush my teeth with this, I comb my hair with this, I throw a ball with this. So my right hand vascularly and muscularly is better. There's more vascularity, there's more elasticity. The muscle is slightly bigger on my right side versus my left side. That's why when I do KAATSU, I'm typically demonstrating KAATSU, I'm typically putting the band on my left arm. Why? I want to become uniform. I want to be completely balanced between left and right. But I know that my capillary refill time on my right side is slightly faster than my left side. And so by doing KAATSU more frequently on my left side, I will allow this vascularity to improve. Her next question, if I'm using KAATSU to work out about every other day, what is the benefit of using them on my off days? And should I ideally use them every day in some form? And I think we answered that already.
Yeah.
And the answer is definitely a yes. I've used the leg bands during the leg workout a couple times now. I tried to follow the instructions in one of your manuals by doing 4 sets. The first one with lots of reps, then decreasing after that, assuming exercising until failure. I did not find that I could do a terribly high amount on the first set, and then the second, third, and fourth sets were still a good amount. For example, doing goblet squats with 25-pound kettlebells, my sets were 30 repetitions, 30 repetitions, 25 repetitions, 20 repetitions. This is not described. So I'm wondering if I'm doing something correctly. Let's just answer that first. Most probably, when I see someone who could do, who's 66 years old, who can do goblet squats with a 25-pound kettlebell, my first thought is this person is incredibly fit. That's not an easy thing to do at that age or half that age. And so if you could do 30 repetitions and then essentially do that 4 times, it's my guess that your bands are not tight enough. And Tina, you and I had actually discussed that a few times, and we had discussed that you want, when you put on the leg bands, you want to be sitting down. You don't want to be standing. When we're standing, the girth of our leg is actually bigger because our musculature is supporting our vertical body. We want to be seated. You can put your bottom at the end of the chair and then tighten the bands. And we say to a 1-finger tightness. However,
angled.
And angled out. So like a women's bikini or a pair of men.
Exactly.
Yes. And this will capture more of the muscle being engorged in blood. And so you want to sit down, you want to put the KAATSU bands on, and let's just assume my arm is my leg for demonstration purposes. What you want to do is you sort of want to pull the band. I'm sorry, this is it. I need to change the camera here so you can see it a little more easily. Here you go. So you want to stretch the band. The bands are meant to be this stretchable. So I'm stretching the band and then cinch it around. Then, very importantly, you want to do 1 or 2 cycles as you're sitting. Why? In those 1 or 2 cycles, your vasculature actually becomes more elastic. Then you can actually tighten the bands even more, incrementally more, but more. So you want to put it even tighter after 1 or 2 cycle sets. And then you can begin, or then you should begin your goblet squats at 25-pound kettlebells. This will actually, the effective compression on your leg will be greater. So that's the first recommendation. The second recommendation is make sure to only take 20 seconds between each rep. Why? Because you don't want all the lactate to be excised from the muscle. You want to leave some lactate in there. So if you do those 2 things, put it a little bit tighter, and you do that by sitting down and then retightening after 1 or 2 cut cycles, and then limiting your rest in between sets to 20 seconds. I'm pretty sure that the number of repetitions that you start off from the first set down to the last set will decrease. And then her second part of the question is, and when I stopped, there was more from overall exertion than from muscle fatigue. That definitely, I can totally see that. If you did essentially 60, 80, you did 105 goblet squats with the 25-pound kettlebell, and you're 66 years old, you definitely have exerted yourself. What you can also do with these goblet squats, and again, it might be a little difficult, is try to slow down your pace a little bit. I know when you're swinging the kettlebell that you won't be able to do that, but try to slow down your cadence a little bit. that will help. And so if you're doing these 4 exercises and it's taking 20 minutes, like you say, you will be totally smoked. And you had to lay on the floor for about 10 to 15 minutes before getting up. This is definitely something we don't want anybody to do. If you're pushing yourself so hard and you need to lie on the floor for 15 minutes before you can get up, please don't do that with KAATSU. If you want to do something else, that's okay. With KAATSU, we want it to be safe. And I just get worried that you're on the floor for 15 minutes with the KAATSU bands on. We want to reduce the number of squats you're doing. Ideally, we want that if we reduce the rest time, reduce the cadence, the pace that you're doing it, and putting a higher pressure, you won't have to do so many squats, and you can move on to your next exercise without a 15-minute break laying on the ground. So hopefully that will help. Tina, have there been some times when you've overdone KAATSU?
I've really learned, I'm reading this and I'm just like, wow. And I understand she's 66, I'm 61. And slow has never felt better. I used to think I needed to get so sweaty. People look at me and I am so methodical. I don't really prefer a kettlebell. I prefer more of a Smith machine with nothing. Or if I added weight, slow 4 seconds down, pop up 4. For me, I see really great results if I do that. And then when I'm done with a 20-minute workout like that, putting my KAATSU leg bands on. I'd rather not exert to the point where I'm wiped out, where I'm slow and fluid. It's amazing. And really thinking about that muscle, whether it's my butt or my legs. So this is very different. And I'm blown away reading this going, I mean, when we're all done with this call, I want to call you and I want to say, like, what's the advantage of working so hard with a KAATSU band on instead of working hard and then, I mean, on the way, put KAATSU on, do it. On the way out, put KAATSU on.
Thank you. My question is on using the device multiple times per day, and if I should change up between the arms and legs. Also, if I only do 1 session per day, would I get the most out of my arms or legs? Showing how someone has built it into their day is perfect. So the first question is, if you're doing it multiple times per day, absolutely do some arms and some legs. We actually, on our B2 device, we see the data because the data on the machine is stored up in the cloud, and I have access to the cloud, and I look at the data across the board. And I think it was in the first month that we, first month or two, we actually had the what do you call it? Accumulated data of the sorry, I'm changing my light here. Accumulated data of everybody. And we found that most men, and what I mean by most men, meaning 80% of the men, were using only arms. And on the flip side, most of the women were only using legs. And what I've seen on a practical basis, that's usually the case. We did see this happy medium in the middle who were almost exactly half arms and half legs, which is what we would normally recommend. Use half arms, half legs, but everybody has a preference, and that's okay. Some people, for example, my father, he has a bad hip, and I'm always encouraging him to use the leg bands more than the arm bands, but he does KAATSU while he's actually at the kitchen table most of the time. So for him, it's so much easier to put the arm bands on, and we've convinced him now when you go downstairs in the TV room and watch sports, as he likes to do, that's an ideal time to put the KAATSU bands on his legs. And so sometimes you have to force yourself to change the normal human behavior. And all we did here was, instead of putting the arms and leg bands on the kitchen table, and he instinctively always grabbed the armbands because they were easy to put on while he was at the kitchen table eating breakfast or reading the newspaper, we took the leg bands and put them in a totally different room. And so in that totally different room, he has only the leg bands. So when he grabs the KAATSU, he doesn't instinctively put them on his arms, he instinctively puts them on his legs. So sometimes if you can think about where to use KAATSU and how to use it, you can influence the way you use KAATSU by where you have the bands and what you're doing in that room at the time. So that's one. The second is, if you're only going to do KAATSU one time, we always recommend, unless there's something you're specifically working on, work on your legs versus your arms. Our legs are bigger, they have more muscles, they have much more vascular tissue. And so you'll get more bang out of the buck by using it on your legs versus your arms. And Tina, I mean, how many times do you go up and down stairs in the course of a day?
It's unbelievable living in a 4-story loft. I love it right now, but I get nervous. Like, am I going to still be okay at 68 years old doing it? It's only a pain when I'm carrying heavy things, but it's a lot. I can't even imagine. And I'm not the type that looks at my phone like, how many flights did I do today? I know it's a lot, and I actually just appreciate that my body allows me to do it.
Yeah, great. Next question is, I have a KAATSU device. However, I've never actually used it. I'm not at all confident on how much restriction I should place on my limbs, and I'm concerned that I might overdo the restriction amount and compromise my circulation above what is required. Therefore, how do I use my device? So the beauty about KAATSU is that it is very difficult. It's almost impossible to use KAATSU as a tourniquet. I mean, theoretically you can, if I put this band on and I really, really thought about cutting off my blood circulation, but it would be difficult to do so. So I'm pulling this band as much as I can, and I'm tightening it as much as I can, and still there is blood going. Again, this is the hand with KAATSU, and this is the non-hand. And even I pulled it as much as I can, it's still not acting as a tourniquet, meaning it's not cutting off or impeding blood flow. So you don't have to worry too much about cutting off your blood supply. Now, let's say I asked Tina to come over and I asked her to put her feet here and yank it as much as possible. Maybe I would have some difficulty, but we would have to consciously figure out a way to cut off the blood circulation with the KAATSU bands. They're engineered to not do that. So that's one. So you don't have to worry. Secondly, we always recommend having a 1-finger tightness on the bands. Now, I just tighten this as tight as I can. I can't put 1 finger in there, but this is tighter than I normally do. So I'm going to loosen it up and tighten it as I normally do, which is a 1-finger tightness. Now here, I could take 1 finger and slide it under the band. But if I took 2 or 3 fingers, there's just not enough room to slide 2 or 3 fingers. I have it enough so I can slide only 1 finger. So If you're at all nervous when you're first starting, we recommend putting it slightly less tight at a 2-finger tightness. So now I can take 2 fingers and I could easily slip it through. If you're really, really nervous, loosen it up even more and go for a 3-finger tightness. And I can fit 3 fingers there. But even at 3 fingers, and I inflated the bands at low pressure, you can always check very simply if KAATSU works. And that is, when I don't have the bands on now, but if I turn them on, you see a slight pinkening or slight pinkness or rosiness to the palm of your hand. If you see a pinkness or rosiness in the palm of your hand, you are doing KAATSU. It doesn't have to be optimal, but you are doing KAATSU. Why? Because blood is going in, it's being engorged in the capillaries, and that is the catalyst for what KAATSU does. Now, if somehow you tighten it too tight and you got Tina and me over and you're yanking it as tight as possible, and in the unthinkable, but I guess possible case where it was so tight that your hand turned whiter than normal, blue or gray, absolutely take the bands off at that point. If your hands turn white, blue, or gray, or you have some kind of uncommon clamminess about them, these are warning signals that your body's telling you is this thing is way too tight. So clamminess, whiteness, grayness, or blueness, take the bands off immediately. But if you did it that tight, it would actually hurt anyway. It would absolutely hurt.
It would. It really
have you ever put on the bands where they're too tight?
I have, and I have this head thing that I so enjoy. As the years went on, the more and more, if I don't have a KAATSU tattoo for a while, we call them KAATSU tattoos, then I'm like, I didn't have my bands on tight enough. So I love when my indentation stays for a little bit. And then if I am in public and people look at me like, what is she doing? My body's so used to it, it turns pinkish so quickly. But yes, I've worn them too tight, and you are absolutely right. Something feels like pinching, or the movement, it just, you can tell intuitively, you will know.
Yeah. What Tina means about the KAATSU tattoo is that the bands are this section here actually is pressed into the skin snugly, and especially for people who are older and have thinner skin, this actually leaves an indentation. And I've seen Tina has the best KAATSU tattoos I've ever seen, worldwide, bar none. So I always, whenever I see Tina, she always says, "Look at my tattoo." And I said, "Tina, I could see your tattoo from 10 meters away."
I don't want to admit it because I'm in the car going to your house, and I'm like, oh no, he's going to see it.
Yeah. So
I have to go to work.
Okay. No, thank you very much.
I loved it. And like I said, I am here. I am happy to help with questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
So again, getting back to this customer, put on the bands with a 2 or 3 finger tightness. Make sure that your palm of your hand is pink. If you're putting them on your legs, same thing. If you're wearing short pants or shorts, you can check that your legs are getting a little more pink, a little more rosy than normal. You could put on one limb and just compare the 2 limbs. If you're wearing longer pants, you can pull up your pants and check your capillary refill time on your calf. If you're at your home and you don't have socks or shoes on, you could do the same on the top of your foot. Next question is, does KAATSU help repair nerve damage from ALS? No, it does. KAATSU does And we get a lot of different questions. Does KAATSU cancer? Does KAATSU help with cancer? Does KAATSU help cure ABC? KAATSU does 1, 2, and 3 things very, very well. And and KAATSU was created, the equipment and the protocols were created to achieve those 1, 2, and 3 things. And the first thing is to engorge the limb and blood to help improve the elasticity of your vascular tissue. That's the first. The second, as a result of that engorgement of blood in the vascular tissue, that elicits a hormonal response, whether that's human growth hormone or any variety of proteins or metabolites. We've actually measured 380 different hormones, proteins, and metabolites that are produced as a result of KAATSU. In other words, if I did something and I measured the amount of hormone, proteins, or metabolites in the body, it would be X. And if I did the exact same thing with KAATSU, then those exact same hormones, proteins, and metabolites is actually a greater amount. Doing the exact same thing for the exact same duration at the exact same intensity for the exact same duration. And we did that up at the Buck Institute in Marin, California, where we took blood samples of us doing something and then took blood before and after. And then we took blood samples of us doing KAATSU, doing the same thing before and after. And we compared those two. Now, we stopped at 380 different elements, and we probably could have measured much more, but we are limited by time and budget. So what it doesn't do, it doesn't repair nerve damage. It could be a nerve damage because of any number of things. So it doesn't repair the nerve damage. Now, that being said, we do have ALS patients. We do have patients who have neurological diseases who are helped with KAATSU, but it's not repairing anything. It's actually helping the body adapt to its situation. So in other words, those patients who have in the midst of losing muscle control or muscle strength, we can actually help improve that, but we're in fact compensating for the body's loss of their nerve damage. We're not actually repairing the nerve damage. So there's some things that KAATSU does well, and there's other things that KAATSU doesn't do at all. And repairing nerve damage is one of those. Next question is, I've been inconsistent in using my KAATSU for a few reasons. And so my questions are, I'm always cold, so I wear long sleeve pants and shirts even in the summer. I can't find a big enough sweater to go over the KAATSU armband, so I end up not using them. Is it okay to use the bands over a sweater, or does that make them ineffective because they can't restrict the blood flow as well? You can use the KAATSU armbands over any amount of clothing. We have people who shovel snow in the Northeast, and they use the KAATSU bands on. We have people with various equipment because of sports or work use KAATSU. The only thing that you may need if you have a thick sweater or a thick jacket or some kind of thick jersey is a larger size band to go over that wear. But actually, we always recommend that you put the bands over clothing, any type of clothing, because one, it prevents the perspiration from being embedded into the neoprene. And two, that friction against the clothing is that actually helps hold the band in place as opposed to being on slippery, perspiring skin. So it's okay. You may have to just cinch down the band a little more if you have a thick sweater on, but it shouldn't effectively change what you're doing. I initially learned that I should do arms first and then legs when doing KAATSU. But if I want to walk my dog and use the leg bands, I find I don't have the time to do the arm bands first before the walk and having to go to work. Is it okay just to go straight to the leg bands with walking? Yes. We sort of addressed this question in the very earlier. Um, Always be well hydrated, always use a cut cycle, and always start on the low pressure, and you'll be okay. Is there any benefit to using the armbands while walking, or is it better to use the armbands while doing arm movements and leg bands while walking? Absolutely. This is a very good question, and it actually gets to the core of KAATSU. In KAATSU, we see the body as having 4 limbs, 4 opportunities to put KAATSU on. And therefore, you can be using primarily your lower body, but you have the KAATSU on your upper body. So as you're walking, you're actually, your arms are engorged in blood. You may be swinging or moving your arms. And this is really, really good. Why? Because you're engorging the limbs in blood, your arms in blood. This means necessarily that you have less blood in the rest of your body. But the brain understands that. And it starts to actually create new capillaries in your brain, in your legs, elsewhere, in order to compensate for that increased amount of blood in one pair of limbs. And so, although we think logically that we're only using our arms if our armbands are on, but in reality, as an outcome of doing KAATSU on your arms and you're walking, you're also gaining benefit in your legs. So this is quite good. And reverse, if you're doing, as I'm doing, or I typically do, I'll have my leg bands on, but I'll be typing or somehow using my arms, and I don't have my armbands on. This is also a benefit. So you have an opportunity 4 times to create these different mechanisms in the body. Do you have any recommendations for varicose veins in both legs, or is it better to do one leg band at a time or both? If you have varicose veins, we recommend that you be patient and gentle. And what I mean there is do KAATSU walking. KAATSU walking is the best form of activity if you're conscious or you have varicose veins. You want body weight. And you want the body weight, you want the leg bands on, you want it to be in the cycle mode. And this, in the same way that you increase elasticity of your vascular tissue, you also very, very importantly increase elasticity of the valves in your veins of your legs. Because your valves of your legs aren't as elastic as before the varicose veins, what happens is the blood backfills to those varicose veins. And when that happens, that's when you see the varicose veins. And so what you want to do is you want to increase the elasticity of these valves over time because they're thicker than the vein itself. So it takes more time to get them more elastic. And so it will take a matter of several months before you see change. And what I mean by several months is keep using the KAATSU bands while you're walking, while you're standing at the kitchen, while you're folding clothes, while you're walking your dog, whatever chance you can to put the leg bands on, put them on. You don't have to do squats or burpees or, Stairmaster, et cetera. Just as you're walking around the day, put them on. Do you recommend using the bands once per day, each, arms and legs, or twice for anti-aging as a 50-year-old? Do you recommend using bands once per day or twice? Excuse me. Frequency is often the most important part of KAATSU, meaning, as we saw in an earlier question, that they either didn't use the KAATSU or haven't used the KAATSU as often as they intended. use the KAATSU. If you can, use it every day. And remember, you don't have to take time out of your day to do a very specific KAATSU workout. Put the bands on as Tina did, while cooking, while eating, while reading the newspaper, while watching television, while walking the dog, while typing, while blow drying your hair, while putting on makeup, while you're brushing your teeth, whatever you can do, find an excuse to put on the bands at least once a day. This would help just increase the elasticity of vascular tissue or maintain it, even on days where you're sedentary, even on days where Tina wakes up later on a Sunday, relaxes in bed as she watches the Sunday TV news programs. I use my KAATSU for about 5 days a week while I get ready for work. I use the progressive mode. Then when that is finished, I do one cycle on high for both my arms and my legs. I feel like I need more. I want to strengthen my hips and core area. Could you recommend how I use KAATSU to better strengthen these areas? Yes. So what you're doing is absolutely correct. This is great. This actually is very consistent on how Tina uses the bands. If you want to strengthen your hips and core, as you're actually, and you're doing this as you're getting ready for work. So I assume in the morning, and you want to strengthen your hips and core. This may sound strange, but as you're brushing your teeth, as you're brushing your hair, as you are getting ready for your day, and you find yourself standing for any length of time, it could be 10 seconds, it could be 30 seconds, whatever the case is, balance on one foot. Just have the KAATSU bands on and balance on one foot. Balancing on one foot will demand that your core, your hips, your glutes are activated and actually to keep you upright. So lift one foot off the ground and just balance on the other leg. This will actually help. I'm sorry about this. This will actually help you stabilize your core and strengthen your core. That's one idea. The next idea is, imagining you at your home getting ready for work. So what do you typically do? You're first in the restroom, and then maybe you go to the kitchen, and then maybe you're in the bedroom, etc. If you're doing those period of time where you're, I don't know, grabbing something from the kitchen cabinet or the medicine cabinet or your closet, whatever, go down. If you have to squat down to get something or grab something, squat down and hold that for 1 second, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. It's not adding too much to your prep time, but that 1 or 2 or 3 times when you're squatting down to grab something, just hold in position. Same thing. Make sure your shoulders are back, spine is straight, and you've got good posture as you're coming up or down. On the flip side, when you're doing a squat and holding it, as you're grabbing something below you, in contrast, you're grabbing something above you. Maybe it's a saucer from your kitchen cupboards or something, and you have to get on your tippy toes. Hold that heel raise for a while. 1 second, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. So you're doing what we discussed earlier with Tina, those micro movements, those isometric moves, holding the squat, holding the heel raise, balancing on one foot incrementally, but just adding a second, 2 or 3 or 4 in the course of your preparation. And this should actually strengthen and stabilize your hips and core. Last question here, and I know we're getting quite long. can you cite any studies regarding, I gotta get this word, hemorrhagic stroke, not ischemic stroke, and the effectiveness of using KAATSU? I read that it might have an impact on executive function. I don't know of those studies. Most of the studies I either participated in or know, but I don't recall any study on this type of stroke. So I apologize there. I'm going to stop my sharing. And now I see there are 10 questions in the chat room there, and I'll try to go through these 10 here. First one is, what is the mechanism that KAATSU activates growth of lean muscle tissue when wearing KAATSU, just sitting and reading? Okay, so if you're sitting, and if any of you ever have the opportunity to meet Dr. Sato, immediately you will feel his charisma, but also just the way he holds his body. I feel energized, but also fatigued when I meet Dr. Sato. And I talk to him nearly every day, and I've met him, I don't know, innumerable times over this last 25 years, but he always sits up straight. He's never slouched, as I have the tendency to do. He's always at attention. He always, in a very non-Japanese way, he always looks you in the eye. He's always totally engorged in the conversation or discussion that we're having. And when he's totally engorged and engaged, he's always sitting up straight. He always has his shoulders back, spine straight, legs on, flat on the floor, never cross-legged. And often we're doing KAATSU at the same time. Basically, he's holding his body in the perfect position as he's doing KAATSU. Holding your body in position is a form of exercise. Now, we don't think of it as a form of exercise, but it is, because if I'm sitting up straight as I should be, as I would be if I'm meeting Dr. Sato, my feet flat on the floor, shoulders back, etc., engaged in the conversation, and I have the KAATSU bands on, the musculature of my legs, my lower back, my glutes are engaged much more than when I'm normally at home and normally not engaged with Dr. Sato. Sort of lean back, my spine is curved, my shoulders are hunched forward, my neck is sort of down. So the answer to this question is, we are actually holding our body in position. And if you're reading a book, you're holding a book. Again, how heavy is a book? A quarter of a pound, an eighth of a pound, a tenth of a pound, but you're holding the book in position and you're turning the pages. If you have the KAATSU bands on and you're sitting up straight, you're actually doing a very, very good isometric exercise. Now, is it as good as doing physical exercise or some kind of resistance training? No, not for building lean muscle tissue. But if you're doing this as Dr. Sato does, day in and day out, and he does 3 KAATSU sessions a day, 2 while he's actually in the course of the business day. So he'll have the bands on while he's talking to someone, or maybe he's in front of a whiteboard or giving a talk or lecture or demonstration. His body is very well. He has very good posture, and it's very elegant in his movement while he has the bands on. So just sitting, slouching is vastly inferior to sitting up straight, holding your body in position. and doing KAATSU at the same time. And this is ideal for the KAATSU progressive mode, where you're starting out at a very, very low pressure and building up to a much higher pressure. The muscles are engaged. So the mechanism is the muscles are engaged, although they're not moving. So that is the key. You want to keep the muscle taut. And if I'm holding my book, my biceps and to some extent my triceps, my lats are actually engaged as I'm holding the book and I'm sitting up straight. If I'm simply slouching down and sort of at a very relaxed position, as I normally did when prior to meeting Dr. Sato, as you could imagine, a high school or college student reading a magazine or a book would do, that's vastly inferior. So holding that position, it's a form of isometric exercise. The muscle fibers are engaged as the bands are inflating and deflating. Is there a limit? Next question, is there a limit on the amount of time one can wear the bands over the course of a day or week? There's a practical limit. I know we have some type A personalities who almost wear it constantly throughout the day. Now, some of these people are professional athletes. Some of these people are business people, comedians, celebrities, or students or other people who are injured in some way. I remember there was a firefighter who broke his hand or his wrist. I forgot, one of the two, snowboarding. And in this particular fireman, because he was hurt off the job, he was not getting his benefits. His benefits lasted for some period, I forget. And then after that period, the benefits would stop. And so he was very, very motivated to heal himself as fast as he could. So he almost was using KAATSU constantly throughout the day. Now, he did come back much faster than he thought he would. Now, could he have come back using KAATSU 6 times a day instead of constantly? Perhaps. We'll never know. But the most important thing is that he was always, people who do KAATSU for extended periods of time, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, are always doing the KAATSU cycle. Always, 100% of the time. You can't possibly do the KAATSU constant mode and do it over a sustained period of time. So is there a limit? We sort of force-fed the limit by having 6 cycles built into the program. Now, of course, you could do the 6 cycles and then repeat it. And we do have some type A personalities who do that. But in reality, we would prefer that you limit your session to 6 cycles on your arms and 6 cycles on your legs. You sort of get around that by doing the progressive cycle, which are much longer. And so we prefer that you do, in an ideal world, you would do KAATSU during 2 sessions of the day. One session you could use more for with more vigor, with more intensity. It doesn't have to be all out, but you could be doing stuff while you're active. The second session of the day would be more to activate your parasympathetic nervous system and is more relaxing. So ideally, as I do, use it twice a day, 6 cycles on arms and then 6 cycles on your legs. One when I'm moving. And moving for me is micro movements, typing on a computer or holding a phone as I'm having a telephone call or walking my dog. And the second is simply when I'm reading something later in the day and I know my day is winding down. So that is what we would recommend. Can you do more? Yes. Are you having more benefit? There's a law of diminishing returns to some extent. And we can't tell you how to use your bands. We can just make the recommendations for best practices. Please explain how I would go about getting KAATSU bands covered by my medical insurance. I want to use the bands to help my venous insufficiently. Also, is there any practitioner in the metro Atlanta, North Georgia area I could visit? There is a practitioner, Dr. Carter, in the metro Atlanta area. He's very good. Send an email to us at info@kaatsu.com, and we can make the introduction to you by email or phone call. Not a problem. There are others, but Dr. Carter is a medical physician, and he's a big KAATSU advocate and user himself. So he may be able to help you with venous insufficiency. Now, how do you get it covered by your medical insurance? Actually, if a physician prescribes it, and under certain conditions, I forget, you would have, please email us. And then, we find that Anthem Blue Cross in California is different from ABC in the New York City area, and that's different from the Oklahoma area. So over the years, we've collected this information, how some medical insurance companies cover the purchase of KAATSU, and some, for example, workers' comp covers KAATSU. Any NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, or other activities where you're considered a professional athlete, that is actually, or professional whatever, it could be a pianist, ballerina, dancer, actor, etc., that is covered. Perhaps you fall under those categories. Sometimes it's covered because you are in a union. For example, you could be a carpenter who hurt himself or herself. You could be, in any one of the construction trades. Sometimes the unions or their medical insurance covers KAATSU. So, unfortunately, or some people say fortunately, some people say unfortunately, other than care, we don't have a nationalized system like we do in other countries. We sell in 70 countries around the world, and quite often the distribution, sales, and medical reimbursement of KAATSU is easier when you're in a nationalized medical system. We don't have that in the United States, and it's mishmash. So we would have to address your specific situation with you. Why use the custom mode? What is the ideal or recommended time on and off on schedule? Is medium the recommended most effective cycle? The custom mode, I addressed a little bit earlier in the webinar. Custom mode is for people who find the best benefit of KAATSU in a pressure that's lower than our low, or conversely is higher than a high. It could be because they are very, very trained individual. It could be because they've got a lot of subcutaneous tissue. It could be that they are just vascularly well prepared for something to do a very high pressure, or conversely. And I treated people with who have been comatose, who have had cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, and a variety of other diseases or conditions. Some of them have been amputees, some of them have been double amputees, some have been triple amputees. And so each of these individuals is a specialty case. So in these conditions, we use different pressures There was an athlete who was got in a car accident, had what do you call it, a traumatic brain injury. So we were very, very gentle on him. And although he was one of America's best athletes at the time, we had to be very, very gentle with him. So we had to use a custom mode with a pressure that was very, very low. We were very conscious of working with it around or on behalf of his traumatic brain injury. We have one of our most famous users is a Green Beret who's a Purple Heart recipient, Joe Lowry. He took a bullet to the head in a firefight with the Taliban in Afghanistan. And, obviously he had brain surgery. He was comatose for 6 months. He had short-term memory loss. So for him, we use lower than low. And now he's doing low, medium, and high pressure in the course of his daily rehabilitation. Is medium the most effective cycle? It could be. And again, let's go back to the use of the capillary refill time. It depends also what your goal is. Is your goal to build muscle? Is your goal to improve stamina? Is your goal to improve speed? All of these actually depend on the kind of pressure, duration, and frequency of use. And so if you had a specific goal in mind, a specific application, you could be a pianist, a carpenter, a basketball player, a gymnast. You could be a mother of 3. You could be a grandmother of 7. Each of these situations, you might have a specific goal. And if you email us at info@kaatsu.com and you explain your situation, your condition, and your goals, we can help put together a specific program for you how to optimize your use of KAATSU. Do I have to sit on the edge of a chair when wearing the leg bands? No, you only sit at the edge of the chair when you're putting the leg bands on. So you want to sit at the end of the chair and you want to make sure that the band is high up in the groin, angled up at an angle. But once they're inflated, you can sit back on the chair and although there will be some pressure on the pneumatic band when it is inflated, typically if you're sitting properly, you shouldn't there shouldn't be too much weight on the band, and it'll be okay. Now, if you are sort of hunched over in a way, and you're sitting in a way that maybe your first grade teacher or your mother told you not to sit, or sit the way that you were taught to sit properly, and it should be okay. Which are the easiest to use and have no tubes and work best? Your website could be more user-friendly. Which are easiest to use? Everybody has an opinion on that. And so we don't make that recommendation because we allow the consumers to make that recommendation for themselves. Which have no tubes. The no tube ones are
KAATSU B2, and it's here.
These are actually, just put it on and then put it on here, and then you use your phone to operate it. And the phone looks like this. Here's my phone, and it's KAATSU Connect. And it looks like this. And then I have to connect the KAATSU with the app. So I press this center here. Now the light is red. I'm going to do the cycle mode. It will, right? Oop, I can't do it. It's one finger. And now you see the light turn red to blue. It's on my arm. Say yes. Do it on low. Here, I'll do it yes. And now it's starting. You can see how the SKU is increasing. So now it's oops, now it's on. Sorry, I dropped my phone. So that is the KAATSU B2 model, we call it, second generation, and it uses a mobile app here. And so these are the different 5 seconds of no pressure. I don't know if you can hear that. Try to make it and now it's 30 seconds of pressure. You can see the SKU here. Now look at the SKU. I have my band just sitting and my arm. I have my arm at rest, but let me do it this way. But now I'm going to do a bicep curl. You can see how the SKU increases because the bigger my muscle is, as I make a muscle, now it's 5 seconds off. Now it's inflated again. If I make a muscle, oops, let me go here. Oops, sorry. Make a muscle here. And the more muscle I make, the more pressure on that band. Release, less, more, less. And actually, this is sort of funny. Because all the data is stored in the cloud with this, one time we had a group of professional athletes and they were given a B2 device and they took it home with them, and the trainer was surprised and he called me and he said, hey, my athletes aren't improving with KAATSU. And I said, I wonder why. And just out of curiosity, I went and I said, are you sure they're using them? He says, yeah, I taught them how to use it. You know, you do the cycle mode, progressive mode, etc. So I went to go look at how they were using KAATSU. And I noticed that these numbers were very static. And I know if these bands were just lying on the table and the athlete turned it on, the numbers would be static. So basically, I told the trainer, the reason why they're not seeing any benefit is because the athletes aren't using the bands. And he said, how do you know that? I showed him the data. Then I showed him this same sample where if I'm doing physical therapy movements and the athletes were being injured, the numbers would fluctuate very much. So you could see how that number, well, now it's deflated. Watch when it inflates. So now it's inflating. And as I move my muscle, you can see those numbers increase and decrease. So if I'm doing physical therapy movements, that data, that fluctuation in data will be apparent. And if the data is just flat, so if it stays at 140 to 1, if it stays like that, I know that they're actually not using it, it's just sitting on their table. So that's a little side story. Next question is, how will the KAATSU leg bands affect recent surgery on my skin? The wound is 1.5 inches in circumference. I've been advised to wear a pressure sock on that leg 24/7 to prevent excessive inflammation. Please advise. So what we never do at KAATSU is to contradict what your own physician recommends. So if your own physician recommends a pressure sock on your leg 24/7, do the keep that pressure shock on 24/7 until he or she recommends that you're healed. So I would ask the physician, I would actually take in the KAATSU bands and show him or her, is it, can I use this? And if they said yes or no, or I have a question or whatever, then answer them, or we could communicate with them. That's not a problem. But I actually think that the KAATSU would help, but I don't want to contradict, and I never would contradict your own physician. So I would always defer to the physician's advice. And if he or she said, no, don't use the KAATSU until the injury is healed or is better, then that's what the directions we would follow. So especially with a compression sock, compression sock is doing something, KAATSU is doing something, and what we want is that compression sock to do what it's intended to do without any interruption by KAATSU. Also, I heard of these when a podcast guest was talking about her arms looked amazing because she sleeps with the KAATSU bands. Okay, I definitely don't want anybody to be sleeping with the KAATSU bands. We want you to be conscious and awake of what you're doing. Definitely do not fall asleep with the KAATSU bands. I don't doubt that her arms on this podcast guest looked nice, good, but falling asleep with the KAATSU bands is definitely not part of the protocol and definitely not something that we would recommend. My resting pulse is between 45 and 50. I think because of all the aerobic exercise I've done over the past 53 years. Would KAATSU make it even lower? I don't know if it would make it lower. I think the only way it would make it lower is if actually you continued your aerobic exercise as you've done for the past 53 years with the KAATSU bands on. However, if you've done aerobic exercise for the past 53 years, you've been very active. And what I would recommend is using it for your recovery, your warm up, etc. You don't need to add it to your aerobic exercise because that's what you do. When we have a low heart rate, to get it lower takes a significant effort, or maybe a medication of some sort. So if you exercise for the past 53 years, if your resting pulse is between 45 and 50, you're doing something correct. You may want to use KAATSU for other things other than the things that I've explained here. But again, I don't think it would be making it lower. Now, if you had a high heart rate and you and your physician wanted to lower that, I think that's where KAATSU would be most beneficial. But in your case, make it even lower, I think would be quite difficult. Reason why is KAATSU works on the vascular tissue, so the capillaries and veins, mostly the capillaries. It's not making the heart muscle itself more efficient. It's making the pipes out of the heart more efficient. So, but if you send an email to info@kaatsu.com, the best people to answer this question are actually the cardiologists who have had 30 years of experience with cardiac rehab patients rather than myself. And I wouldn't mind doing that because I would like to know the answer myself. Next question is, how many times a week is required for optimal benefit and how long to see marked change? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I don't know what you're seeking. So if we had a concrete goal in mind, it could be anywhere from I want to gain another 2 centimeters of muscle in my arms. I want the ability to walk up 10 flights of stairs without getting out of breath. I want to lose weight. I want to do ABC. Then I could give you a specific program and give an estimate on how long that would take to see marked change. So I need to know what the goal is. How old are you? What you prefer to do? Some people are runners, some people are joggers, some people are sedentary, some people are swimmers. And so I need to know all these backgrounds to answer that question with any degree of confidence. I wear a continuous glucose monitor. The bands are not over it, but should I avoid KAATSU while wearing? The continuous glucose monitor is usually right about here on the arms. We have KAATSU customers who do wear continuous glucose monitor and do KAATSU. They see benefit, but again, because we have 4 libs, we have 4 opportunities to use KAATSU. You could use KAATSU on one arm, do bilateral exercises, use the KAATSU on your legs, doing bilateral exercise, and still gain benefit without impacting your continuous glucose monitor. Are the leg bands helpful for nightly leg cramps? It could be, although I don't know we need to know what are the possible causes for nightly leg cramps. For example, if my mother came to me and said, Steve, I have nightly leg cramps, what should I do? Instinctively, I would say, an hour before going to bed, I want you to sit down, proper sitting position, good posture, put on the leg bands on low and do at least 6 cut cycles on your legs. Make sure that you are well hydrated when you do that, meaning her urine is clear. Now, she may have to go to the bathroom sooner or more frequently, but if that's the outcome of reducing her nightly leg cramps, I don't know if she would accept that, but that's what I would recommend. But we need to know first why you're getting the nightly leg cramps. Again, I don't mean to not answer the questions directly, but I also want to know the background in order to provide as specific advice as we can. I've lost muscle mass due to prostate cancer. Is there evidence KAATSU can help with my condition? So I assume your condition is the loss of muscle mass as opposed to, I guess, remission of the prostate cancer. So if it's a loss of muscle mass, I always point to the fact that we grew muscle mass, 22% more muscle mass on a 104-year-old woman who had been previously bedridden for several months. So 104 years old, we were told that a 104-year-old would never gain muscle. And we proved that wrong dramatically in that she gained 22% muscle mass off, documented by an MRI in Tokyo, and we have video of her. So if we can do it for a 104-year-old, I don't know how old you are, but I'm confident we could do it with you. Now, that being said, she followed all the advice. She did it daily. She did it cut cycle. And so she was diligent in doing it. She did it frequently. She did while she was well hydrated. She did different exercises, not only walking. She ended up walking with ankle weights on. She was so excited about finally being able to walk up flights of stairs and go up to her second floor of her home that she really took it to the next level. So we can build muscle mass. We've built muscle mass, get this, on comatose patients. How do we do that? The comatose patient obviously could not communicate with us and could not consciously move their own body. And so what we did was passive KAATSU, meaning we put a KAATSU on their arm or their leg, and we actually took their wrist and I did the movement. I moved the muscle for the patient. So whether it's arm or leg, we've done it with quadriplegics. We actually hold their knee and we move, and we have another hand on their ankle, and we're moving their leg back and forth. We've taken the bottom of their foot and pushed against them. And so we've built muscle on quadriplegics and people who have been comatose and people who are 104. So I'm quite confident if you follow the KAATSU protocols that you would regain muscle mass because of loss of anything. And so it's been it's been 2 hours. I thank you very much for staying on, and we're going to post this to our website, and we'll see you in another month. Thank you very much for your patience. I hope Tina and I were clear enough, and thank you very much for either embarking on or soon to embark on your KAATSU journey. I know you're going to see multiple benefits. So thank you very much. Steve Munatones signing off. Bye.